Hey, yo, folks. McLeland, the prosecutor in the Delphi case, the murders of Abby and Libby, has done a new interview with the Hidden True Crime podcast. Now, I wish I could show you that interview and analyze it for you, but they are highly well, they like to copyright strike or copyright claim things. So this will be me analyzing, and you have to, sadly, you have to go watch that damn thing yourself. Sadly. But let's give it a go. Welcome to the show. Okay. Well, the interview starts out with the normal ass kissing. With, we are so happy to have McLeland here and stuff like that. And one of the first things that comes out of whatever her name is, let's see. I don't remember. I don't care what her name is. Says in the opening segment, saying that Rick Allen is British guy. And I have to remind you guys that Prosecutor McLeland, while talking, having the so-called eyewitnesses on the stand, never asked the question, is the guy you saw, is Rick Allen the guy you saw on the bridge? Why? Because he didn't know the answer. Or he might have known that they wouldn't answer the way he wanted. And then continues with, well, she has a point in, yes, Richard Allen is convicted. So it is by that, yes, they can now claim that Rick Allen is Bridge guy. You and me know it's bullshit. You guys, me, and many, many others knows that it is bullshit. And then she goes on to say they will go live, maybe Sunday, with new exhibits. Remember the exhibits that the court refuses to send out to anybody who asks for it. The FOIA requests have been completely ignored with bullshit reasons. But when apparently they claim they have access to it. Isn't that weird that the ass kissers, they get access to these exhibits, but the rest of the world does not? Isn't that strange? Isn't that strange? No, it's not. Because the prosecution, Judge Gull, Prosecutor McLeland, the investigators, and HTC, they are still building the narrative. Ignore the actual evidence and only present the stuff that seems be negative to Rick Allen. Of course they do, because they have this narrative in them. And I guess, hypothetically, if you are one of these government studios that makes money out of this. Now, I have seen a lot of I've seen a bunch of commentary about, oh, Nick, you're only doing this for the money. You're only selecting cases because of money. Blah, 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 blah. Folks, if I was only after money, I would not be here. I would have to make my best month in my entire time I had this channel. My absolute best month was just over $3,000. That month I believe I produced almost 250 hours of content. That's below minimum wage, way below minimum wage. If I was just going after money, I would work. I would take on cases. I would do freelance stuff. Yeah. But the real grifters here are people who should be able to think with a critical mind, actually evaluate the evidence, all of it, and not kiss government ass, as I believe HTC is doing. But that's besides the point. Well, that was just a remark regarding why are these people getting evidence the rest of us don't. Then she claims that McLeland says that public deserves to see this. If he had any interest in allowing the public to see all the evidence, he could have filed for a public trial himself, allowing it to be televised. But he didn't. So this transparency thing that he is claiming is this tiny bit of transparency that speaks in favor of him. While the case is enormous, I can bet good money we will only see this much. And then he whines about the 43-second video, and he claims it was leaked because it was not through the official channels. Again, what kind of transparency is that? That he whines about the video. And why does he do that? Of course he does. Because once we saw the video, it didn't add up with what he have tried to put out to the public for 7 years. Going on 8 years. 8 years. For 8 years, he has tried. The investigators have been putting out these absolute lies about the video. So of course he whines about it. Of course he whines about it, because it turns out they were lying. And then, think of the family. This guy, he couldn't care 2 cents about the family, about the families, in my opinion. And he claims he's getting choked up. No, that's bad acting. And then he claims that he and his office has dual roles, both as prosecutors and as victims' advocates. That, in my opinion, is conflicting interests. Because you are supposed to go for the truth. And there you have a narrative you want to push. And you are also the one doing the consoling of the victims. That's conflicting interest, in my opinion. That alone, just no. And that now it's about, they are sharing with the family that some of the evidence will come out. This should have been told to them months ago. That now when the trial is over, this will be public information. And again, what HTC claims that they have some evidence they will present, I assure you, the rest of us have not seen any of that. We will not receive any of that because the court, Judge Gull and her staff, is withholding this from the public. McLeland withholds this from the public because they don't want us to see this so-called evidence, because we have so much more to see. What are the discrepancies? What doesn't add up? What are the actual timeline? We now, HTC, with the help of the state in this case, will only produce things that fits their narrative. And that is not searching for the truth. But then again, we know McLeland has no interest in truth. They're talking about difficult witnesses and expert witnesses. Here, McLeland says about the toolmark person, who we also know, her testimony, bullshit. You cannot compare a fired shell casing with a cycled cartridge. Anybody who does that should never be allowed near a courtroom ever again. If that is what they have to do to make a match. It's not a match. Never was. That is an invention. And if McLeland told her to, or if this toolmark person decided to just help out a little, either way, garbage. And now they are going, okay, let's talk about from 2017 going forward. He was born and raised in Delphi, Indiana. Nobody is surprised. He has known the German family all his life. Talking about, this is generations of people. Yeah, we know that. Generations of this is Delphi, Indiana is almost an incestuous community, because it seems to consist of mainly people who does not leave this 3,000 people village. And we know about one of the biggest things in Delphi, Indiana that you can be involved with is the local Masonry, the Freemasons. And we will probably get into that a little later. And now he claims that, everybody thought, they will turn up, they will do this and that. No, they didn't. There was a search party. First, the immediate family, then more locals, and then a ton of people went searching for them the entire evening, most of the night. So, McLeland, why are you lying about such obvious things that we know is not true? How can you sit there and say everybody thought they would turn up? Everybody thought they went to a friend's house and fell asleep. Everybody thought that this and that. That's a lie, McLeland. That's a provable lie. That didn't happen. Because you yourself, in court, in front of the jury, talked about search parties. The afternoon. Immediately, when they didn't show up for pickup, people started searching. And then more and more people joined in. How can you even sit there and lie? Well, we know he can, and we probably know why, because they have a narrative. They have. Nobody thought they were with a friend because they called. The families called their the friends. I mean, that's what you do. Hey, is my kid at you with another friend? Did they walk to another friend? You call. And they called. Jesus Christ, McLeland, what a bad liar you are. And then he claims, oh, not until, it's the next morning. Now maybe something bad has happened. The next morning, hundreds of people in a 3,000 population, hundreds of people were out searching. And here he sits in an interview and claims, not until the day after. That's a provable lie. And then he goes on with, how could this happen here? This is supposed to be a safe place. Just months before, 4 children, the Flora Four, was burned to a crisp in a house fire, an arson. You know about that, don't you, McLeland? Your dad was a convicted arsonist, wasn't he? Yeah, you know about arsons. And just months before, 4 kids died in arson. Now, I know there were 4 black kids, and maybe you don't care. Well, we know you don't care, because 8.5 years later, even, folks, I've read the Flora Four documents. I have them here. Hold on, I will actually show you. Hold on while I... Dun, dun, dun. State police report, run sheet narrative, arson report, police report, interviews, and miscellaneous reports, suspects and witnesses, whistleblower letters, E911, civil case, autopsy reports. I have everything. And I tell you, there is an apparent suspect. The landlord. For me, it's obvious. But he's still out and about. And allegedly, he as well is a Masonry brother with Prosecutor McLeland. Isn't that weird that suspects who are Masonry brothers with McLeland don't get charged? Isn't that strange, folks? But let's get back to this interview. He was a defense attorney at the time in 2017. He wasn't in the prosecutor's office. So not until after he shows... Wait a minute here. I haven't thought about this. He was a defense attorney at the time. And then, after that, he got elected prosecutor. Was it because the prime suspect at the time or people of interests were Masonry brothers with you? Is that why you chose to actively go out of your way to be a prosecutor so you could help them? Yeah. He says that. I should have kept playing. He became the town prosecutor January 1st, 2018. So he was a defense attorney. The people of interest were his, at least one, probably more, were Masonry brothers with him. And then suddenly, the then prosecutor chose to retire. Boom, here he is. All of a sudden, he's the prosecutor. No freaking wonder those people were never charged. Oh, for frick's sake, he's aiming to become a judge. No. No. For God's sake, do not elect this absolute twat to a position of judge. He's reasonably young. He's going to be a judge for 30 years, protecting his Masonry brothers. And the first thing he did was to take charge of involve himself in the case. Well, he had to. He was the prosecutor. And apparently, he sat down and talked to Jerry Holman. All of a sudden, these 70 days of missing interviews make sense, and why they try to hide it from the defense. And he says he saw the video and the crime scene photos. Didn't they inform you about the people of interest? Didn't they inform you about Keegan Kline? Holman knew about Keegan Kline in 2017. Did he inform you about Keegan Kline, Mr. Prosecutor, that Keegan Kline was the one who told the girls to, one of the girls, to be at the bridge that day? Did he tell you that? Or is this one of the things that you conveniently ignored as well? Why would you ignore an active child groomer? Why? Why? Oh, and now he talks about the Flora Four fire. Oh, how he wanted to arrest and convict somebody for that crime. Was that until you learned that the prime suspect was allegedly another one of your Masonry brothers, Mr. McLeland? So they have a brief every Friday where they told each other, this is what we have. Again, that tells me not only Holman knew, well, Holman might have ignored this. But if they had a Friday weekly meeting, he learned about Brad Holder. He learned about Ron Logan. He learned about Westfall. And he learned about Keegan Kline. And did nothing. Nothing. A reminder here, between 2017 and 2022, they knew that the girls were found on Ron Logan's property. That was obvious from the beginning. They knew he lied about his alibi. At the time, his gun couldn't be excluded, Ron Logan's gun. At the time, what else is there about Ron Logan? Oh, let's see here. Yeah, they knew about at least one confession probably both, to a fellow inmate. They knew phone records put him outside of his home at around the time the girls the video. What was it? 20 minutes before he got a phone call, something of the sort. I can't remember from the top of my head. So they knew he was outside of his home just before the girls disappeared. They knew Ron Logan lied about his alibi. I mean, and then they did nothing. They had Kathy Shanks looking at all the things, and she excluded him, Ron Logan, as a suspect. With all of that, which I just mentioned, she cleared him or recommended him to be cleared. To Holman, McLeland, Liggett, whatevers. The same person who then recommended to look more into Rick Allen, who was on the other side of the bridge looking at fish at a time frame that might have been an hour before, who does not resemble Bridge Guy. That none of the witnesses, nobody, for 5 years, Rick Allen was at the counter at CVS, and nobody thought of him as Bridge Guy. Nobody who talked to him said or phoned in a tip about him as Bridge Guy for 5 years. Anybody who today say, oh, I'm sure it's Rick Allen as Bridge Guy because of the video. Oh, I'm sure he sounds like Bridge Guy. People in Delphi, Indiana, who met with him, actually met him. Nobody, not one person for 5 years said, oh, he looks like Bridge Guy. Oh, he sounds like Bridge Guy. Not one. That, folks, is confirmation bias. If you claim that this is him, it's confirmation bias because you want it to be him and nothing else. And now he claims things about the video that we watched it. We all watched it. What he claims is simply not true. This again goes to they are building a narrative, desperately building a narrative. Remember, folks, in the press conferences they had, the claims were you could hear panic. The claims was they could only release this because the other things are too gruesome. All lies. We know that now. So I do not think their desperation here today or yesterday or in the throughout the trial, after the trial, the narrative they have been pushing is because they know once the evidence gets released, their lies will become too evident that the narrative they've been pushing since 2022 has been lies, a manufactured prosecution against a person who, by all accounts, in my opinion, had nothing to do with this. Yeah, and that he mentions family members, but he conveniently leaves out Abby's mother, birth mother. Conveniently. Why is it convenient? Because they pushed her out. Why? Because she's an outsider. She's not one of them. Now they are talking about what did you start doing in 2018 when you took office, as investigative methods. Again, I'm going to say this a lot. Again, they had Brad, Patrick, Ron, Keegan. They had 4 prime suspects. There are evidence against each and every one of them. Real evidence. If they actually cared, they would have done a much better investigation regarding these people. But for some reason, Holman, the human lie detector, decided they are not suspects. And McLeland, no, they're not suspect. Some of them are my friends. Again, they're talking about the tips that came in, the thousands and thousands and thousands of tips. Yeah, none of them led you to Rick Allen. Isn't that strange? But again, you had prime suspect. Why wasn't that thoroughly investigated? Oh, now they're talking. Oh, we looked into Ron Logan. Oh, we looked into Brad Holder. Looked into, or did you actually investigate? Because you had everything you needed to actually arrest Ron Logan. And I can bet you good money that he would have squealed. How do we know this? Because he did. Twice. To Richie Davis. Twice. And you chose to do nothing. And Brad Holder, who you looked into, your Masonry friend, your Masonry brother, whose interview you lost. So they are making fun of this odinist theory. Remember, folks, that was not a defense theory. That they didn't learn about this until they actually got the report, the 13-page odinist report, which, by the way, McLeland tried to hide from the defense. McLeland is not a good guy. If you are searching for the truth, you are not scared of any evidence. McLeland was scared of all the evidence and still is. Now they're talking about Keegan Kline and Ron Logan, why they weren't arrested. Yeah, what's your excuse? What? You had a guy who were actively grooming children, and you allowed him to continue grooming children for years. You had things on him that would, just the fact that Keegan Kline was actively grooming children, you knew that. And you chose to not go through his phone or his electronics. You would have had a search warrant in seconds. And you never actually investigated thoroughly. If you had, Keegan Kline, even if he had nothing to do with this, he groomed children. And you did nothing for years, allowing him to get in contact with hundreds of victims. That was your choice, McLeland, and Holman and Liggett and everybody else. You chose to allow Keegan Kline to continue Yeah. And now he's referencing, oh, they weren't in Delphi at the time. That is a reference to Keegan Klein. However, they would know that because burner phones that were on site. And then he talks about an alibi, which is, I believe, a reference to Ron Logan, which we know he was lying about. Not only was he lying about his alibi, if he made that alibi up before anybody even knew the girls were dead. Oh, now they're talking about the odinist on the Frank's memo. Oh, really? Now he says they investigated it. No, you didn't. It was a three-part investigation because they believed you didn't do your due diligence. It was under FBI flag. Before you, McLeland and Holman and Liggett threw out FBI. They kept investigating. And they presented you with a 13-page report that you then tried to hide from the defense, which your investigators tried to hide an expert in the field from the defense, claiming, oh, forgot his name, yada, yada, yada. You lied. Maybe not McLeland by person, but by proxy, you helped lying about the Odinist theory, the FBI Odinist theory. And now in this interview, you fucking asshole. We interviewed the professor from Purdue. Yeah, the professor. You tried to hide from the defense the name and what he actually said. In an affidavit, was it Holman or Liggett? I don't remember. Who lied to the defense about what that professor actually said. Or if it was in an email. He claims they couldn't prove the elements of the crime with these people. Well, maybe if you actually investigated what they were actually doing. And here's the thing. At this time, you didn't know the time of death. You took for granted. Your medical examiner couldn't point up a time of death of the girls. This 232 thing, that didn't show up until later. That did not show up until later. That you believed they were killed more or less minutes after the video. So whatever alibi they claim to have around that time is worthless if you don't have an actual time of death. You just assumed. You just assumed. Without evidence. And you went with that. You just assumed. So I don't care what gym Brad Holder went to, because we don't have an actual time of death of the girls. Alibis are worthless if you don't have a time of death. You have to, okay, what happened then? What happened later? What were you doing between 32 past and the next 12 hours? What did you do? And if you don't have an answer to that, claims here they couldn't place them in Delphi at the time. They had alibis at the time of the crime. But you don't know when they died. When the girls died. Now, if you go by the 43-second video, Girls Down the Hill. For what we know, that could have been a guy just walking past. For what we know, who had nothing to do with it, or it could have been Ron Logan. Since we don't have a time of death, their alibis at the time of the crime. Well, which one? The kidnapping or the murder? If there ever was a kidnapping at the time of Girls Down the Hill. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that claims they were murdered just minutes after this video. There's actually zero evidence for that. Absolutely zero evidence. They couldn't tie them to the crime scene is the next argument. Well, if you had actually sent the DNA of the unknown people to a private lab, if you cared enough about these girls, even though the local crime lab couldn't test the DNA samples, there are private crime labs out there who for years have been able to produce DNA out of samples who are so tiny you can't believe it. But in this case, no, we must do it ourselves here. Maybe because, again, prime suspects are Masonry brothers. You tend to believe them, don't you, Mr. McLeland? Thousands of man-hours on the odinist theory. Where are the reports, Mr. McLeland? Where are the reports? Will we ever see them, or are they shredded, forgotten, hidden, ignored? Oh, now they are talking about Elvis Fields and the saliva. Oh, please. And the reason apparently is because Detective Murphy didn't believe what Elvis Fields said. And that's why they didn't go any further. And we know that there are unknown DNA on the girls. Unknown male DNA of the girls. And you have a person saying, if my spit shows up. And you don't care enough to actually... That's not following a lead. That is ignoring a lead. A local cop says, I don't believe him. Okay, move on. No, you don't. This is so infuriating to watch this. And at the time, I'm going to do some editing on this because I'm listening and then talking about it. I've been recording for an hour now. I am 15 minutes in this interview. 15 minutes. And now he claims if there were other people involved, the only person who knows that is Rick Allen. No. Do you know how I know that? Because you charged him as the only person. You told a jury he did it and he did it all by himself. And now he's more or less opening up for if there were more people, only Rick Allen knows. No. Now you're contradicting yourself, Mr. McLeland. Because if you thought there would be more people involved, and I know this entire investigation for many years thought it was more than one. I believe it's more than one, just by the nature of the crime scene. Folks, where they were found, there are trees, but there are no leaves. You hear everything. In the 43-second video, you hear traffic from the highway that is close by. When I and Mo went on that trail, we heard people. And this was in August of last year. And we could hear people. And that is one of something I've been thinking about for a while. Even if nobody saw anything, how come nobody heard anything? There are houses nearby. There are roads nearby. This was on a day. And this is one of the reasons why I don't believe the girls were killed directly after the 43-second video. You hear stuff happening everywhere on that trail. Because me and Mo heard this while we were walking there. We heard people. We heard cars. And this was in the middle of summer with everything green. This was in February. No leaves anywhere. Why didn't anybody on that trail hear anything? For me, that this tells me that the girls went down the hill. Did they meet anybody? I don't know. Were they on their way to somewhere? Probably. The 43-second video tells me that they were going somewhere planned. And right down the hill, and you can see it on the video, is that gravel road. We don't see a car or a van, but we know that one van drove there, around there somewhere, at 44 past. Yeah. They claim that I don't know if that van was ever searched. Tell me in the comment section. Maybe it was. I don't care. Maybe it was searched. They didn't find any blood or anything or any of the sorts. But then again, the girls, we don't have a time of death. We don't have a time of death. And maybe that is why nobody heard anything. Because they weren't there. Yeah. Now they're talking about the Frank's memo a bit more. And this was a theory of the defense. Well, of course it is. They are defense attorneys. And they weren't allowed to say anything about this. Because Judge Gull said there were no nexus. A guy spitting on the victim. Another guy confessing. Another guy confessing. A known child groomer was in contact with one of the victims who told them, be at the bridge that day. no nexus. So nothing was allowed by Judge Gull about a possible third-party culprit. And now McLeland said they did not meet their burden. Well, that's because Judge Gull is a genuinely bad person, a bad attorney, a horrible judge. So claiming they didn't meet their burden because Judge Gull said so means absolutely nothing. And now I don't care what her name is, says, oh, I didn't see a nexus either. If you don't see a nexus with 2 confessions and a guy spitting on the victims, then you're a fucking moron. And here's the claim again. They couldn't tie them to the scene of the crime. Unknown DNA. A guy saying he spat on the girl, one of the girls. Confessions. No nexus. Child grooming. No nexus. If this host of this podcast, the interviewer, sees no nexus, it's because she's a fucking moron. And now this other guy who they claim is some kind of freak, I don't know. It's the host's husband. I don't care. Now he's making excuses for, oh, this should not have been taken literally. A guy saying, I spat on the girls, and then there's unknown male DNA on the girls. And if you don't take that seriously, then you're a fucking moron. And now they're talking, oh, we interviewed him 4 times. Oh, please release those interviews. Let us hear it. If it's, no, there's nothing here, then what are you scared of, McLeland? What is frightening you so bad that you cannot risk us hearing this? And now they are talking, oh, they pick out the things that we do, pick out the things that supports them, and they latch on to him. Well, you actively hinder us from knowing more. All of these things that I've been talking about for 2 years is because we didn't know more. Because you, McLeland, your investigators, the local cops, actively hindered and lied about the investigation. And now you're blaming us for latching on to the few things we can wrestle out from your grasp. And these are just the things we actually ripped from your grasp. Allow us to see the rest of it. If everything is so perfectly clear for you, McLeland, allow us to see it. But no, you cannot risk that. That is why 5 months after the sentencing, we still don't have these public documents. And now this podcast apparently will produce some. Where did they get it from? Was it from you? Oh, McLeland says, well, you have to look at everything. Okay, challenge accepted. Allow us to look at everything. Oh, now he's saying we are ignoring that he was on the trail that day. We are not. We know that. We are actively counting these things in. Then he says they ignored that the bullets were fired to him. We don't ignore it because it's a falsehood you're presenting. the bullet, anybody saying the bullet matched is either actively lying or is a moron. And they claim we ignore the confession. No, we don't. We know about the 61 confessions. We know about all of the confessions, the so-called confessions. We also know about the Haldol, Soviet Union's favorite mind-altering drug. You put him in solitary confinement, surrounded by guards and inmates who hated him. Then you had this, what was her name? Dr. Walla, the true crime fanatic who actively put herself in there and then shredded her notes. We know the confessions were under Haldol. We know that. We are not ignoring anything, you fucktwat. We are putting it into context. We know that Haldol is a mind-altering drug. If you are given Haldol and you have people around you, inmates, guards, who happen to be odinist, by the way. Did you forget about that? The guards with odinist patches and the guard who, when they were forced to remove those patches, tattooed Odin's spear on his fucking face. What a coincidence, right? And all of these people, while Rick was under Haldol, you have them screaming at him. And you have this unethical shrink who probably fed him information. That together with, because Rick Allen was allowed to read. He had some meetings with his attorneys where they went through what your case was against him. And then force-fed Haldol, a mind-altering drug. We know all about that. We are not ignoring it. The people who are ignoring things, or they are, you, Mr. McLeland, I bet you are not ignoring it, but you have a narrative. You are accepting that you have to lie and actively hinder folks from learning the truth. What are the actual evidence? Give us the geofencing. Give us the cell tower data. Give us all the evidence. But no, you can't risk that. That is why you and Judge Gull so desperately are actively hindering us from getting it. And I don't know if Mr. Allen's appellate attorneys can aid us in this, but sooner or later, these documents, all of this evidence, it will be public. Unless you decide to be a judge, McLeland. And you decide, no, the public can't have this. Maybe that's the reason he wants to be a judge, so he can keep this a secret. Oh, there's no DNA to place Elvis at the scene of the crime. You have unknown male DNA at the scene. And we know there has been some testing of it because it's not Rick Allen's DNA. That you could conclude, but you couldn't test all the DNA? Then how could you conclude that Rick's DNA wasn't at the scene? How the fuck can one person brutally slay 2 girls and not leave DNA? We have these unknown male DNA on the victims. So you're claiming there's no DNA connecting him? Well, that's because you refuse to test the DNA. You didn't test the hair around the fingers until a couple of weeks before trial, when it was inevitable that that would be a defense argument. And through sheer luck for you, it turned out to be the sisters' DNA. I have questions. How, through all of this, hair was stuck around the fingers through what, according to the state's theory, going through water, dressed and undressed, undressed and dressed. Through all of that, hair was still around the fingers. I have questions. Because, and now it's for their cause, blah, 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 blah. It's because it's reasonable doubt. We are not doing this to prove that Elvis Fields did it beyond a reasonable doubt, or Brad Holder, or Ron Logan, or Keegan Kline, or Patrick Westphal. It's reasonable doubt, which, if you actually have a strong case, you are not scared of third-party culprit defense. This shit about, oh, it will confuse the jury, it's bullshit. This is the prosecution being deadly afraid about people knowing all the evidence. Oh, and this, I don't know who the husband of the host. We have confirmation bias. Then show us everything. Show us the evidence you present. At least show the evidence you presented in court. We don't need the crime scene photos. We know how what the scene looked like. We know that. We don't need the photos. We need the actual evidence. All of it. Not just the things you presented in court. We need all of it. That, so we can make us informed. And now they are keeping on this confirmation bias. Folks, you have heard me say this before. I am fully prepared in every case I cover to change my mind. Fully prepared. But I need to see what that would be. What is this? Because all they have, folks, remember, is Rick Allen's own phone call and the interview. Yeah, he was on the trail that day. That's it. That's all they had when they decided to write an affidavit and get a search warrant. That's all they had. They knew he had a gun. Okay, so does everybody in Indiana. Everybody has guns. So, and then these confessions, those weren't until later, and we know the circumstances of the confessions. The Haldol. We know that the gun, the bullet matching thing, we know that is bullshit. And that is all you have. If you have more, then present it. Oh no, you can't, because You don't have it. You did, McLeland, you didn't even have the balls to ask the witnesses on the stand, is Rick Allen the person you saw on the trail that day? Because you were scared of the answer. That's the only reason why you never asked that question. And if your counter argument is, well, the defense didn't either, they don't have to. They do not have a burden of proof. So, Jesus Christ. Well, I've been listening through roughly half an hour of this. And at the time of the I've been recording for an hour and a half. I will do the rest another day, because at the moment I cannot hear more of this bullshit. This absolute bullshit they have been presenting for the first half hour, for whatever it is. I have to do more at another occasion, because this is pissing me off, and it should piss you off as well. Primarily because I can't show this whatever fuck is the name now again? HTC, Hidden True Crime, because I can't show you and do the normal commentary, because they will throw copyright claims on me. These are they have done that before, and then on the last interview with Holman, they did. Anyone who dared to actually comment on their video while showing that interview, they copyright claimed them. And they might do it to me with this. They should. There's nothing to claim here, because I'm not actually showing, but I'm doing commentary. And they, Hidden True Crime, deadly afraid of criticism, because they are cowards. They are too busy gobbling government cock. And they know they are. And that's why they are afraid of this. But I'm going to sit down and edit something that resembles something, because I've been pausing, talking, stop, and all of that all together. So hopefully this turns out to be somewhat coherent. If it doesn't, I apologize. But if you watch my commentary, you can yourself play that video if it's still up. They might privatize it, and see where my commentary comes into that interview. That's the best I can do. If you're still here, thank you for listening in, and I will return with more of this junk Prosecutor McLeland and Hidden True Crime tries to feed you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Raven waves, brothers, axes high, shields strong. From distant lands we gather, hearts of fire all along. Obey me, cause we follow, through the storm and through the fight. For Valhalla we will borrow strength and might under moonlight. Of the ancient